This is CityCast Seattle. I'm Jane C. Hu, and here's what Seattle's talking about. Hey neighbors, welcome to the very first episode of CityCast Seattle. Bow, 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 bow.
Bow, bow, bow.
That's air horns. You may already know us from the first few issues of our newsletter. In an issue last week, a story by contributor Chase Hutchinson broke the news that 2 Seattle venues, Madame Lou's and the Hereafter, plan to shutter later this year. Our team is really excited to join you every day to talk about all things Seattle. Election Day is a wild day to launch our first episode, so we're leaning into the wild side by having our first ever guest be a puppet. Welcome to the show, Seattle Channel, or SC for short. I feel like I'm meeting a celebrity.
I'm really honored to be invited.
Also joining us is producer Sam J. Leeds. Hi, Sam. Are you feeling as starstruck as I am?
Hi, Jane. Hi, SC. Yeah, I'm feeling extremely starstruck. This is a big deal for me, and I think eventually our listeners will see why it's a big deal for them, too.
It is a huge deal. So SC is obviously a real person and not just a puppet. And you might already know their work, creating sock puppets of Seattle City Council members and using them to act out scenes from real city council meetings. Those clips have been popular on their YouTube channel and their TikTok and Blue Sky accounts called the Seattle Channel, not to be confused with the actual TV channel, the Seattle Channel. If you've ever seen The Office or any other workplace comedy, it kind of has the same vibe. And throughout this project, they've remained anonymous, so they're choosing to go by SC for this interview. So today is Election Day in Seattle. Ballots are being turned in as we speak. First question for both of you has got to be, have you voted yet? SC.
My ballot is filled out, but I still have to walk it over to the ballot box.
I literally am sitting here with my mostly filled out ballot, and I also need to get to that ballot box soon. What about you, Sam?
In classic producer style, I voted and voted early. So,
nice.
Yeah, my ballot has been turned in. I walked down to my local ballot box because I wasn't ahead of the 10-day deadline for mailing it in. So for all of our listeners, if you haven't voted yet, make sure you put it in a ballot box and not the mailbox.
Not the mailbox. Might not get there on time. Can't guarantee it. Got to do the ballot box. Well, okay, SC, so you started this project about a year ago. And now we're heading into Election Day. I want to hear a little bit about the origin story. Like, what made you decide to take this on as a project?
So the origins of this project date back to 2020, when there was a group of creative folks who got together during that time of a lot of protests and interest in local politics, and especially in police and prison abolitionist thinking and how it might apply to a Seattle context. And so we got together and we're working on various campaigns for activist groups. And so it was really out of the work of that group that the Seattle Channel emerged. There's a group of us who have been working on it, and it comes out of several years now working together on other projects that are trying to bring people's attention to local politics and particularly around these issues of community safety.
Amazing. Okay, so how many of you are involved in this?
There's 5 of us, including me.
Okay, so do people each have like a puppet that they're playing, or do you all just kind of switch roles?
No, so I'm doing all the puppeting. I'm the puppeteer.
Okay.
So essentially, the group works kind of like a writer's room. I'm actually not that funny, but some of the folks that I do this project with are hilarious. And so a lot of the ideas, like the comedy kind of parts of it, or the ideas of what parts of council meetings would really work in puppet form, are coming from my collaborators.
So I want to disagree with the idea that you're not funny, because I feel like if you were the architect behind this whole idea of using puppets in the first place, that is an inherently hilarious idea. And I mean, why puppets? Like, why did that feel like the direction that you all wanted to go in for this?
Well, there was a couple of things that came together. One was like kind of realizing that social media, Instagram particularly, which had been one of our big focuses for kind of community political education, was just not really effective. Increasingly people are just checking out of social media for a lot of really good reasons. And even if they are still on there, it's just a kind of deluge of stuff. And so we were trying to think of other forms that could reach people. We were sort of like, oh, right, TikTok. That's what the young folks use. So the original idea was like we were going to make some kind of short video format things to post on TikTok. And the idea for puppets really, it partially came about because I just have a lifelong love of puppets as an art form. Yeah, for talking about politics and parody of politicians, but also the Muppets, like I grew up on the Muppets and
of course.
I think heavily influenced by them. And the metaphor seemed just extremely appropriate for this particular city council, the idea of sock puppets, because we were really wanting to highlight some of the ways in which the council have been acting in extremely undemocratic ways, that they seem to be not actually being representatives for their people in their districts or the people of Seattle, but actually representing the interests of real estate developers and other powerful players in city politics that are not just regular people like you and me. So,
okay, yeah. So sock puppets as a metaphor for being sock puppets for other industry interests.
Exactly.
So two of the current city council members who have appeared in your videos, Alexis Mercedes Rink and Sarah Nelson, are now up for re-election. What have you learned about them through this project?
Way too much. I never thought I would spend so much time watching city council.
Yeah, how much time are you spending watching these? I wanted to know that.
I mean, it's hours. I mean, it's all, like, that's the great thing about doing this with a group of folks. We all have ended up watching just hours and hours of these meetings. They have meetings almost every day of the week of various committees. And then once a week, they have the regular city council meeting. So it's a lot. I've learned a lot.
If you had to sort of summarize some of the things that come up again and again, what are some of sort of like the key takeaways from Sarah Nelson and Alexis Mercedes Rink that like you would highlight?
Well, Sarah Nelson, as the council president, has sort of taken on a role, I think, akin to Kermit the Frog in the Muppet Show, in that she's like the producer, like you, Sam. She's the ringleader of this kind of unruly gang, and is often in the position of trying to keep things in order. And I think that as it emerged in the puppet videos, her leadership style is just really not up to the task. She hasn't been able to really handle some of the conflicts and more difficult situations that arise in the, fairly contentious debates that happen in the city council chambers. I think she's just kind of in over her head in this role, and she hasn't managed to really introduce much legislation that has been of any significance.
What about Rink?
Interestingly, Rink has not been portrayed as a sock puppet.
That's right. She's only been like a popsicle stick. Is that right?
That's right. So I mean, we made a decision early on that not every current council member would be portrayed as a sock puppet. And that was really because we felt like some of the council members currently really are not sock puppets.
Is there a popsicle stick metaphor here?
That came about because of a particular meeting of the Human Housing and Services Committee in July that we really wanted to make a video about. And Sarah Nelson and Rob Saka did not show up at the meeting. It was Mark Solomon and Alexis Mercedes Rink who were the ones who did show up. We did not have sock puppets for either of them because, in our opinion, both of them were folks who were trying to, do a reasonable job of representing their constituents as opposed to the sock puppet council members.
Interesting. Do you feel like after having watched, hours and hours and hours of these meetings, that this has given you insight into how the council makes decisions?
Yeah. I've learned a ton. I mean, it really has been a civic education. I had some involvement with the activist stuff, but this was definitely a much closer study. And I love that you brought up The Office in your introduction, because I feel like that is so true. Like, this is really a workplace for these folks. Like, they have their little spats. They get frustrated with each other. They like kind of lose the thread of what they're doing. They like have very awkward little like birthday celebrations for each other, all this stuff. Also, it's just, gosh, like political process is painful. It's slow and it's often very frustrating. And I think, maybe partially by design, because it's about trying to reconcile lots of disparate interests into a course of action. And so it's just, a lot of talking.
I have to say, it's sort of my personal worst nightmare to imagine having to do a group project that's visible to the public. Like, watching Seattle Channel on YouTube or whatever sort of makes me think of city council as way more comedic than I would have initially thought. But then from like a human level, imagining every group project dynamic being visible to the whole city is just kind of sounds horrific.
Right? It's kind of a nightmare. I mean, all that sausage making happens in, theoretically in the public eye, which is part of our thinking with the puppet show as well, is to sort of distill down moments that might be of interest to people, because the actual recordings are just hours of often very boring speeches.
Yes. You're doing a public service by digging through all of those. If you want to see any of Seattle Channel's City Council puppets, including his very own puppet that's appearing in this interview right now, you can find his channels at the Seattle Channel, or you can also see them on our Instagram and TikTok at CityCast Seattle. I want to know from you, SC, how do you all choose what clips to parody? You mentioned there's kind of this writer's room. You're going through hours of footage. What stands out to you as these 1.5 to 2 minutes to really highlight?
There's two things that I think that the things that really are the most successful videos are, there's two different criteria. So the moments where they're interacting makes really good puppet videos. And those also happen, not surprisingly, to be the moments that are the most awkward or most revealing of their personal relationships that provide some character to them. And then the other thing is, we really have been trying to look for things that really connect with and illuminate topics that are contentious, or really things that are the city council are making decisions about that are of real consequence for the city.
Like what?
So one of the videos that have been most popular is one that's called "This Is Fine," and it's basically Sarah Nelson puppet struggling to try to deal with a very unruly group of public commenters. And this is one of the cases where she's just having a very hard time dealing with it, to the extent where finally she decides to take the meeting into recess and have all the council members retreat to their offices and continue the meeting on Zoom, so they don't have to deal with the public presence.
I remember this being in the news as well.
Yes. Yeah, it was quite noteworthy. And the issue behind it, the reason there were very loud, there was a moment where, again, Kathy Moore, I believe, was trying to push a legislation that would have repealed part of the ethics code for the city. And it caused a lot of outrage. And so that's just one example of a really contentious issue that we tried to capture in a video.
I feel like the other theme that I've seen in Seattle Channel videos are capturing the often absurd, weird asides that people make. You're wondering, how could this possibly make sense in any context to have come up in a city council meeting? I remember one of my favorite videos is one of council member Bob Kettle talking about Bubba the penguin at Woodland Park Zoo. And I know you ended up making a Bubba the penguin puppet as well. But I mean, what do you feel like these absurd moments tell us about the council? I mean, they're very funny to watch, especially set to actual puppets. But do you feel like that means something bigger about the council or shows something about how they work?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Kettle definitely does that, but I think Sokka is really the one who goes on the most fantastic flights of fancy in his remarks that are often quite incredible. One thing about this council that I think they came in a moment where I think there was a lot of kind of reactionary feelings about what happened in 2020 and with that city council around public safety. It was actually like a planned kind of hard pushback on a lot of progressive ideas that were gaining traction in 2020 in a way that frightened a lot of conservative folks. So this council was kind of part of this movement. And I think they came into power really feeling themselves, I think they were like, we've got a mandate from the voters, and our vision for Seattle and what, particularly around public safety, what that means to us is hiring more cops, like throwing more money at the police department, like growing the police and prison system, jailing people for, misdemeanor drug use on the street. And so I think some of these off the cuff comments from Kettle and Sokka kind of come from that place of really feeling themselves, of feeling the power of this position that they're in.
Have any of the city council members responded directly to your work? Like, are they, I know that you all brought the puppets to City Hall recently, had them on display. Do you know for a fact that any of them have seen it or have they reacted to it?
Yeah, so they haven't responded to us directly. We've heard quite a bit indirectly from folks. And it was really surprising. I mean, we heard like halfway through the year that the entire City Hall was obsessed with these videos, that everyone was watching them. They were convinced that it was being made by an insider because they couldn't imagine that anyone else would be watching all of these meetings and know so
little did they know,
right? And know so much about what was happening in City Hall. So what we've heard indirectly is that they are really into them, which is surprising. Like like Bob Kettle apparently claims he loves his puppet.
I actually saw in a Cascade PBS piece about this project that he wanted to note that he has a little pepper in his beard as well, and to maybe incorporate that into his puppet.
Exactly. They've had little notes about like kind of how to make the puppets more accurate. I don't know. It's a funny thing. I mean, not all of them, but definitely some of the council members seem like they really enjoy them.
Have you noticed any sort of changes in their behavior from when you started doing this project to now based on, I mean, you don't know for sure, but that you can infer came from them watching, you guys essentially watching them?
Yes. Yeah. There's definitely been some feedback effects like that have been really interesting, at least that we think are a consequence of the videos.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that we've noticed is there has been less off-the-cuff remarks that kind of get into fantastical territories. Like they started sticking much more strictly to their scripts, particularly Rob Sokka. His staffers must have told him, like, stop speaking off the cuff. You have to read all of your remarks off your computer. They seem more self-conscious generally. They feel, that people actually are watching them in action.
I mean, to be fair, I feel like that's a fair amount of pressure, but, as an elected official, you did sign up for it. Rob Sokka, if you're listening, please keep the asides coming. I've been really enjoying them, and it makes watching city council meetings just a little bit more fun. If you want more Seattle news, you're in luck. In addition to this podcast, CityCast Seattle also has a daily newsletter. To get the latest headlines and events in your inbox every morning, you can subscribe at seattle.citycast.fm. So I don't know about USC, but to me, it feels like this election cycle has been going on for 1,000 years.
Oh, seriously.
I know your project is focused on city council, but have there been any other moments this election season that you've thought to yourself like, oh, we should branch out and do other candidates? Like, have there been other absurd moments or sock puppet worthy moments that you feel like you would have wanted to cover if your scope had gone beyond just city council?
Oh, well, I mean, I feel like Bruce Harrell's, his whole campaign has kind of been one stumble and bumble after another. I think after the primary, I think it has been a real scramble for him to try to figure out what kind of messaging will actually get him reelected.
We were talking earlier about how you don't actually have puppets for each of the council members, I guess, besides maybe some popsicle sticks for a couple of them. And I mean, obviously, elected officials are public figures and they have real power and influence, and their decisions should be open to critique. Like, that is a key tenet of democracy. But also, I mean, you and your team are remaining anonymous. So I feel like I got to ask, like, ultimately, is this punching up or is it punching down?
Oh, I mean, 100% the intention is punching up. We would never try to do parody of anyone who didn't have real significant power, and have the ability to make a real difference in lots of people's life chances. For example, as soon as Kathy Moore left the council, we haven't used her puppet and we won't use her puppet again now that she's out of the public eye and is no longer a politician.
Oh man, retiring the puppets. It feels like it should go in Mopop or something.
I know a lot of people are upset at the prospect of the Sarah Nelson puppet being retired at the end of the year. I guess we'll see.
Well, I was going to ask, what is going to happen here? So, I mean, Sarah Nelson's up for re-election. So is Alexis Mercedes Rink. It looks like, based on the polling from last week, Rink has a pretty big lead. Nelson, on the other hand, does not. What is going to happen to this project from here?
Yeah, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I'm not sure we're really resolved on what the future of it will be. I mean, I think so far it's been very, very much like Sarah Nelson's council has been the focus. Like I said, she's sort of the Kermit of this Muppet troupe. If she's not reelected, then the show will definitely change a lot, or perhaps we'll go on hiatus, but we'll just have to wait and see. I think this particular project has gotten really a big response. Like, people really are fans of it in a way that other things that we've done haven't really generated that. And it's, it's really great. I love that it's bringing more people, hopefully, to pay attention to local politics.
All right. Well, we will all be waiting with bated breath for election results, but also to see what the fate of the Seattle Channel's whole project is going to be. SC, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Jane. It's been a pleasure. And thanks, Sam.
Sam, yeah, thanks for being here.
Yeah, this was fun. It's great to get to hear some of the behind the scenes of how it all gets made.
Well, listeners, we want to hear from you. Which Seattleite would you most want to see in puppet form? Tell us about it by sending an email to seattle@citycast.fm or leaving us a voicemail at 206-880-3931. Or even better, tell us what you want us to cover on this show. You can get more news, events, and election coverage delivered right to your inbox by subscribing to our newsletter. Just go to seattle.citycast.fm. Also, again, if you haven't voted yet, like me, remember to put your ballot in a drop box. Until next time, see you, Seattle.